You and I know most eyes only see worthless trash. To her it was a ruined yard and a broken man, the short-sighted judgment of an executive who only valued polished assets. Charlotte Vance stood among piles of raw potential, seeing only useless rust as she stared down Logan Mercer. She gave her cold, narrow-minded verdict, "This place is trash. Sell it before it pulls you under." Logan did not argue. He just nodded, quietly calculating what she was missing. But his builder's mind was already mapping out a future her spreadsheet-driven brain could never comprehend. A master plan designed to force her to completely rethink what real value actually looks like. How does forgotten scrap transform into a $1 million empire? Stick with me. We are about to uncover how to find gold in the ruins. It began the day Logan inherited his father's lot, looking past the dust to find his legacy. A flat concrete sky hung overhead, blind to the wealth of raw materials waiting just below. The entrance sign read Mercer's Yard, its faded lettering hiding a massive opportunity. The steel post holding it up was rusted through, ready for a creative rebuild. The structure slumped at an angle, looking like defeat to amateurs, but like a blank canvas to Logan. Logan sat idling in his truck, envisioning how to breathe life back into these silent machines. He was 40 years old, ready for his biggest rebuild. A master mechanic, whose hands understood the hidden balance of heavy machinery the way a genius musician knows their instrument. His palms carried deep stains of motor oil, permanent badges of honor earned from years of solving complex mechanical puzzles. For 15 long years, he was the mastermind keeping a massive commercial shipping fleet running smoothly, diagnosing catastrophic engine failures and restoring dead transmissions, keeping complex shipping networks operational through the worst weather and toughest road conditions. He diagnosed failing industrial trucks with the precision of a surgeon reading a critical scan, not by studying dusty textbooks, but from the deep intuition gained by working on the front lines of heavy industry, tearing down broken hardware to reveal its hidden flaws. Then short-sighted executives laid him off, completely blind to the invaluable talent they were discarding. Meanwhile, his father had spent 30 years quietly gathering a treasure trove of valuable parts, reclaiming high-value components, carving out a business from what others threw away. His father had suddenly passed away 3 weeks ago, leaving behind his life's work. His old workspace sat quiet, a humble headquarters that held decades of untapped value. He never had cash, but he left behind raw potential. Instead of cash, his legacy was a 3-acre goldmine of commercial steel. 60 commercial vehicles waiting for restoration, plus 3 40-foot high-grade steel containers. 4 high-capacity diesel generators ready to be rebuilt, and a covered workspace with endless possibilities. And $220,000 in debt, which was actually just the price of admission. Plus a key vendor relationship that just needed to be rebuilt with trust. Logan's short-sighted brother walked away within 48 hours, unable to see the future harvest. He eagerly signed away his share of the gold mine without looking back. Dismissing the land as a useless money pit, he retreated to his comfortable, low-yield life. So Logan became the sole owner of this massive uncut diamond. He did not fully grasp the massive future payout on day one. But he knew his father's decades of labor held deep, hidden value. And he refused to let vultures buy up this future empire for pennies on the dollar. Then, the bank arrived demanding their immediate payment. Where average minds see trash, visionaries see raw potential. Logan had 90 days to unlock cash flow before foreclosure. He had under $3,000 left, scant seed money for what lay ahead. His young son, Caleb, was 20, back home after quitting college mid-semester, a kid whose true education was about to begin. On that gray morning, the kid stood at the edge, seeing only dead trucks, blind to their hidden value. Rusted shipping containers and weeds, valuable assets hiding beneath years of neglect. He quietly asked, "You sure about this, Dad?" Logan did not answer, focused entirely on what could be. Instead, he walked to the fence, spotting a discarded wrench, a tool he could immediately put to work. He unearthed it, wiped off the grime, and pocketed the heavy steel, knowing every asset matters. Then he turned, pacing the perimeter slowly to map out its real potential. Sizing up the assets, like a master builder planning a total ground-up reconstruction. He ignored the kid's doubt. Actions build futures, not talk. His ultimate vision was clear in how he moved. 9 days later, Charlotte Vance arrived in a polished SUV, looking only at the messy surface. Another vehicle followed, carrying her analysts to crunch the numbers on his land. 38 years old, Charlotte carried the poise of a power player who knew that how you enter a space decides the value of every negotiation before a single word is even uttered. She had scaled her logistics firm from a tiny startup into a massive high-value freight and real estate empire in a mere 8 years. Not through superficial charm, though she used it when necessary, but through a sharp, relentless foresight that left competitors scrambling to keep up. The market respected her because she saw the future first. The massive latent value of Mercer's land was her true target. The location sat right against Interstate 40 at a major hub her team flagged years ago as the highest-yielding spot for a freight terminal. Massive traffic, completely untapped demand. Positioned directly between booming supply chains that outdistanced local infrastructure. She initially sent a broker to acquire the high-potential asset, but Logan knew its true worth, forcing Charlotte to negotiate herself. She stepped onto the lot in boardroom attire, completely misjudging the real work being done, and found Logan where actual builders expect to find talent, getting his hands dirty. Under a 1999 Freightliner, diligently salvaging high-value components from a rusted frame with his wrench. Hearing her approach, he calmly finished securing his asset and slid out from under the heavy machine with unhurried poise. Standing up, he cleaned his hands and evaluated her potential. Charlotte bypassed the small talk, focusing on transaction. She made her pitch, offering current land value minus his debts, completely ignoring the future worth of his operation. A quick exit strategy to clear his debt, but leaving him with almost no upside. Logan listened calmly, evaluating her move without interruption. Once she finished, he simply asked, "Why would I sell?" Charlotte scanned the area, entirely blind to its true growth potential, looking highly amused by the question. She scoffed, "Because you're standing in a junkyard, Mr. Mercer. Honestly, this place has no future. Sell before the bank takes it all. At least you'd walk away with something." She spoke with zero malice, dismissing his future potential entirely. Before leaving, she made sure her corporate suits heard her write off the property's potential. "I have seen people try to save dumps like this. They always crash harder than if they just sold out early." She tossed her sleek business card onto the hood of a rusted-out truck, completely blind to its raw potential. Logan picked up the card, evaluated her logo for a second, and shoved it into his pocket. Then he turned back to the damaged Freightliner, ready to unlock its hidden value. Rumors of failure spread fast in these tight circles. Communities built on truck stops, shipping docks, and local gossip. Within 48 hours, 3 old business contacts called Logan, looking to buy cheap. They wanted to know if he was selling. Logan gave every single one the exact same answer: not yet. He kept the real potential of that word to himself. Stick with me here. He spent 3 days auditing every square foot, logging future assets in a small notebook. Tracking raw data, not wishing for success but planning for it. Hard specs, mechanical metrics, load capacity. This is exactly how an investor works when they stop wishing and start building real wealth. "You and I see the truth." Logan looked at that dirt and saw raw, untapped opportunity, not trash. And that massive vision gap became the ultimate launchpad from a messy present to a wealthy future. The corporate executive saw only liabilities, old rust, and immense risk. Logan recognized a highly profitable logistics hub waiting to be unlocked. The site sat strategically at mile marker 41 on Interstate 40, 12 miles from the nearest rest stop and 20 miles from any emergency repair service. Hundreds of heavy commercial trucks rolled past his gates every day. Blown tires, failed transmissions, and engines breaking down with nowhere else to go. Logan knew from his years in transport that the most expensive nightmare for any trucking company is a stranded cargo rig with absolutely zero repair options nearby. This isolated location was a massive competitive advantage. It was an unserved market niche sitting directly on the valuable land his father preserved for 30 years. He audited those rigs like an expert who spent 15 years extracting value from heavy machinery. Out of the 60 semi-trucks parked there, exactly 9 possessed engines ready to be restored to operation. Basic electrical issues, stripped gears, and cosmetic damage, nothing structural, A skilled technician could easily restore them all. 17 other units were too damaged to save but packed with high-value spare parts. Heavy axles, fuel systems, brakes, starter motors, and premium salvage components. He pulled premium parts directly out of those retired rigs and instantly validated his high-yield business plan. 3 dirty shipping containers sat on site. Their structure was solid, representing instant low-cost storage space. Standard 40-foot assets that once cleaned and fitted with recycled timber could start generating immediate storage revenue. High-demand warehousing for carriers. Now you and I see the gold mine. Real visionaries saw constant, untapped demand right here. Flexible, short-term storage waiting to be unlocked along the highway. Logan saw what you and I see, desperate carriers scrambling when schedules don't match reality. To an entrepreneurial eye, those 2 broken generators meant future fortune. Off-grid power meant keeping this valuable asset running during blackouts, which happens constantly on these freezing, brutal winter routes. Far more often than comfortable, short-sighted corporate CEOs sitting in warm offices would ever care to realize. Once he cleared out that supposedly worthless junk clogging up the front fence line, he suddenly unlocked 15 to 20 highly valuable commercial parking spaces right there. Absolutely zero overnight truck parking existed nearby. For 30 miles along that brutal, unyielding stretch of highway. At $20 a truck, he projected an easy 6 parked rigs to launch his cash flow. 4 unpolished but highly profitable revenue streams, built on massive logistics demands that blind competitors completely missed. He needed $8,000 for parts, junk cleanup, and restoring his first asset. Naturally, the short-sighted local bank rejected his loan application. So Logan sacrificed his personal car, liquidating it quickly for $6,200. Then he flipped a pile of salvaged tractor parts to an old friend, instantly securing the exact remaining cash he needed. He had precisely enough working capital, absolutely nothing extra. He rebuilt that forgotten Freightliner, working 14 straight days, grinding from 6 a.m. until midnight to bring it back to life. Alone in a freezing shop, under a swinging bulb, with a cheap heater failing to fight the bitter winter chill rising from the concrete floor. This 2009 Class 8 workhorse was pure potential. Logan systematically replaced the entire ruined transmission auxiliary unit. He restored the complex air brakes and rewired the entire cab harness himself. He repaired the heavy trailer coupling. Then he test drove it at 2 a.m., listening closely for any hidden flaws that could drain his future profits. Turning trash into a high-performing asset demands absolute, unbreakable mental focus. Honestly, dedicating himself to that hustle was exactly what kept him sane. As his greasy hands rebuilt that heavy machine, he ignored the terrifying foreclosure letters and the ticking 90-day banking deadline. He forgot the arrogant CEO who only saw worthless trash in his yard. He focused entirely on turning this discarded machine back into a moneymaker, rebuilding it to haul heavy freight and generate real wealth in any weather. On night 15, just minutes before midnight, the dusty shop wall phone suddenly rang. A vintage landline left behind by the previous owner. Logan wisely kept it active, knowing cell towers freeze and fail on this brutal route. And you and I know that missing alcohol means missing revenue. The frantic voice on the other end belonged to a trucker named Adrian, a vital contact in the regional logistics network linked to this yard from years ago. Adrian was stranded on the shoulder of Interstate 40, 17 miles east of Logan. His heavy truck had slipped out of gear, completely paralyzed on the ice. He was hauling a massive high-value cargo of frozen goods bound for a major grocery distribution center by 6 o'clock the very next morning. Inefficient corporate roadside services demanded a 4-hour wait and $1,500 to help. Adrian saw only a dead end. He spotted a ripped note on a bulletin board, just one number but a massive opportunity. It was Logan, a visionary who only asked 2 simple things. He needed 2 data points, the exact mile marker and total cargo weight. Grabbing his coat, he fired up his rebuilt Freightliner, a revived machine rolling out into the freezing black night. He located the stranded rig in under 40 minutes. The expensive corporate truck sat dead, cab lights blazing, while Adrian shivered outside in the bitter cold. Logan spent 15 minutes identifying the exact technical breakdown. the drive unit had suffered a complete gear engagement failure. Most would quit here, since field repairs required unavailable spare parts. But he saw the real value. The cargo remained perfectly secure. Logan backed his restored Freightliner right next to it. For an hour and 40 minutes in freezing weather, they manually shifted the entire high-value shipment. Pushing a manual hand truck box by box, they sweated under headlights, turning a breakdown into a breakthrough. They ran on pure relentless grit. Freezing air and the sharp focus you only get when a brutal supply chain deadline demands your absolute best. Logan backed into the logistics loading dock at 5:42 in the morning, exactly 18 minutes before the final deadline. The warehouse supervisor checked the paperwork, verified the load, and signed. Adrian shook Logan's hand in the dark parking lot under the gray pre-dawn sky, pressing $800 cash into a grease-stained hand. Once Adrian left, Logan sat quietly in his rebuilt Freightliner cab. He stared at his first seed money. Outside, dawn broke over the warehouse roof as the first heavy cargo haulers started flooding the local interstate. You and I recognized that rewarding kind of tired, not the soul-crushing exhaustion of a pointless corporate grind. This was the solid exhaustion of a builder who proved his vision actually worked. See how real value multiplies. Within 48 hours, the trucker network did his marketing for free. Adrian was sharing his experience, and high-impact stories travel fast. A rapid late-night rescue executed with a rebuilt truck, completely bypassing bloated corporate bureaucracy. 3 separate leads arrived in 2 days, requesting emergency hauls, breakdown towing, and secure yard storage. Logan ignored vanity metrics like slick websites. He just had a phone and one reliable vehicle. But that lean foundation was enough. He constructed his emerging logistics empire like a master mechanic, builds a high-performance engine, piece by piece in perfect sequence, refusing to scale up until his current foundation was completely rock solid. No venture capital or corporate suits backing his play with a fancy plan and an open checkbook. Just his yard and a high-efficiency schedule tracked in a cheap spiral notebook. Within 3 weeks, he revived 2 more abandoned vehicles, expanding his fleet. He color-coded the fleet. Green meant active revenue, yellow meant under the wrench. Red meant pure salvage value, while strict maintenance checks ran every 72 hours to prevent downtime. This intense operational discipline was second nature. 15 years of managing corporate fleets gave him the exact blueprint to scale his own enterprise. He applied it to 3 restored trucks as easily as 30 corporate rigs. Transforming the front yard into a logistics hub took just 1 weekend. He and Caleb cleared worthless scrap from the fence line using an old forklift. Spreading reclaimed gravel to level the yard, they marked exactly 12 parking bays using simple rope and stakes. I hung a laminated rate card on that gate, $20 overnight, $8 for 4 hours. That first week, 7 heavy rigs proved this lot had real potential. Week 2 brought 11. Soon I was turning empty space into recurring revenue. Truckers realized my junkyard was actually a clean, secure asset. It was prime real estate off the highway, and cheaper than anything within 30 miles. Then came the shipping containers. I spent 3 days washing them, restoring value to a damaged door on the 3rd box. I built fresh flooring from scrap pallets and installed secure modern locks. I drove to the city, walked into 2 freight brokerages, and pitched my vision to their managers. High-value, short-term storage, a weekly rate 30% below corporate warehouse pricing, open 6 days a week. They both saw the value immediately. One manager even shared my contact details with a 3rd company. See the potential. Within 6 weeks, those old containers generated steady weekly rental income. My emergency repair and vehicle recovery startup scaled in exactly the same way. I printed simple cards listing my number, service area, and a transparent, fair rate schedule. Then I asked 2 truck stop managers to let me leave a stack of cards by the register. Both agreed. Soon the phone rang constantly, bringing 6 to 12 service calls weekly by month 2. I eventually hired a retired trucker named Marcus to handle my part-time overnight shifts. An experienced man who truly understood heavy diesel engines and the road. Plus, he had absolutely nothing better to do at 2 in the morning. By the end of month 2, I sat at the wooden desk inside my newly restored office. I had corrected the structural lean, swapped 4 wall panels, and finally calculated the numbers. You know the feeling. For the first time since taking over, profits finally outgrew my expenses. The scrapyard wasn't bleeding cash anymore. It was finally breathing with potential. I reinvested every single extra dollar directly back into improving the yard's infrastructure, operating purely on black coffee and whatever leftovers remained in the fridge, working with the quiet, relentless focus of a man who understands the boundary between failure and success is often just absolute consistency. Showing up daily, keeping the equipment running, and answering the phone whenever it rings at 3 in the morning. I saw Caleb spending his first weeks here like a man stuck in a waiting room. He was physically present but completely checked out, just wasting his potential. He slept late unless I pulled him up, avoiding his old friends when they texted him. He kept his answers vague, too embarrassed to see the potential in my yard. One afternoon, a girl he used to know back in his freshman year of college drove her car along the road right next to our property. Instead of facing her, Caleb hid behind a container until she drove away. Understand this. His turning point did not come from a conversation. It happened late Tuesday in week 3, while I was replacing a cracked exhaust manifold, on a rig booked for an early morning run when an urgent call came. A driver blew a rear axle seal stranded on the highway 18 miles out. I could not leave my current job unfinished overnight. I tossed Caleb the keys to my backup tow truck, telling him to find the driver, assess the damage, and call me. I did not say another word. Caleb started to protest but saw my look, shut his mouth, and took the keys. Caleb reached the breakdown site. Where others saw a hopeless mess, he saw a problem to solve. He found Derek, 50-something, looking defeated by his flashing hazards. He saw raw potential there. Solving that messy logistics problem flipped a switch in Caleb. Instead of a headache, he saw his own future, waking a drive he had buried for years. He took careful notes, called me, and invested his time staying with Derek until the heavy-duty tow was sorted. Then he drove back to our salvage yard at midnight, his mind quiet but plotting. The next morning, I did not offer empty praise. I just asked one simple question. Do you want to learn how to run our fleet scheduling? I need someone to manage the call log and track our truck availability. Caleb did not answer me right away. He poured some black coffee, stared at the rusted scrap outside, seeing past the junk, and finally sat at the beat-up laptop on my desk. He spent the day teaching himself free scheduling software, turning a basic tool into a powerful calendar framework for our entire recovery fleet. By sundown, he had built a working system, crude but highly valuable. I studied it quietly, recognized the brilliant logic, and immediately used it for our morning dispatch. 4 weeks later, an enticing job offer came through an old contact. A secure supply chain role at a shiny corporate distribution firm. Comfortable office work and an immediate solid salary. Caleb read that text twice. Then he looked at the raw scheduling board he had built from scrap cork. He scanned his handmade system, choosing future growth, and laid his phone face down. He did not waste time replying that day, or the next day either. Soon he forgot it completely. He was not staying here out of simple obligation. He stayed because this messy, raw operation held a real future that clean classrooms never could. You see, he finally understood our secret. While others see a dying scrapyard, we see a massive goldmine of raw potential. 3 months in, Jason Mercer showed up on a quiet Thursday afternoon. He was driving a flashy rental, wearing a suit worth more than my whole wardrobe. He strolled right into my yard, acting completely relaxed, as if he were just visiting some small, cute pet project. Smug and comfortable, he surveyed our growing fleet of heavy-duty trucks. He eyed the sealed containers and our active workshop. He wore the tense look of a CEO who made a bad gamble, deeply regretted it, but stubbornly refused to admit his mistake. Over cheap office coffee, Jason finally made his big pitch. He claimed he had new funding ready to go. He wanted a 30% stake, offering quick cash to fast-track our logistics expansion. He spun it like he was doing me some massive personal favor. As if 3 months of early morning shifts, rebuilding scrap vehicles, and answering towing calls at 2 a.m. was just practice. Like I needed his fancy corporate blessing to build our future. I calmly reminded him about the signed waiver, no anger, just cold, hard facts. The contract was ironclad. Jason had signed away his future. Stick with me, I do not run a charity that fixes bad corporate decisions later. Jason walked out with a tight, fake smile that never reached his eyes. 2 weeks later, my drivers started calling me, whispering about some shady rumors. A competitor was calling freight carriers, claiming my business lacked valid commercial permits. Some coward was posting lies in a trucker forum under an anonymous account. He was attacking our business practices, claiming our growing recovery fleet relied on unregistered trucks. One loyal driver said he received a direct warning, an actual call telling him to drop us before we got shut down. You and I know that means they are terrified. Logan scanned every single permit and registration, seeking a hidden bargaining chip. You and I know paperwork alone cannot kill rumors that sabotage was working. To an amateur, a 1/3 drop in weekly calls looks like total ruin. 2 cargo tenants called next, threatening to pack up and jump ship. A loyal driver who parked there nightly for 3 weeks suddenly vanished completely. Caleb finally uncovered the fake account. He had been monitoring driver forums since taking over scheduling. The trash talk had a clear pattern. The specific phrasing, the exact cadence. Specific details lined up with that messy Thursday afternoon in the yard. It echoed their private office chat with far too much precision. He matched those digital timestamps directly against Jason's recent hostile visit. Caleb handed the proof to Logan, slapping it on the desk and quietly stepping away. Logan phoned Jason that night. See, a weak man screams, but leaders whisper. He turned that raw data into a strategic weapon, reciting the posts, texts, and timelines so cleanly that Jason had nowhere to hide. He asked just once if Jason did it. The coward denied everything. Logan simply let the silence hang. The quiet stretched so long that Jason squirmed, letting out a nervous sound between a fake laugh and a weak defense. Then Logan dropped the hammer. He possessed concrete proof and sworn driver statements. If Jason ever messed with the yard's supply chain or clients again, the lawyers would get absolutely every single file. Jason panicked, immediately trying to play the family card, whining about fairness and what their late father would have supposedly wanted. Logan cut him off cold. You signed the waiver, that was your choice. Do not try stealing back the trash you happily threw away. Then he just hung up. Now watch this. Charlotte's corporate representative arrived that evening, hoping to squeeze out a cheap land deal. Lurking by the gate, he caught the icy end of Logan's warning drifting right out the open window. He headed back to Charlotte with a grim report. A report containing far more valuable intelligence than she ever requested. Most see a crisis. Logan saw future value. He personally called every single carrier poisoned by those rumors. Here are the operating permits. Here are my registration numbers. And here is the raw insurance data. Verify all of it yourself. Most of those clients returned immediately. Even better, 2 massive transportation companies called him up after hearing about this bold transparency from trusted drivers. Jason's sabotage was meant to completely destroy the yard's already fading name. Instead, it gifted Logan free marketing to an industry that respects a true leader who picks up the phone personally and delivers the hard truth. Stick with me. Winter on Interstate 40 was about to yield a goldmine. By Wednesday afternoon, the National Weather Service issued a brutal winter storm warning. Over 20 inches of snow was projected in just 18 hours. High winds would rip visibility down to absolute zero by midnight. Freezing roads meant any wet surface would turn to black ice by 9 p.m. sharp. Terrified corporate carriers immediately started pulling their big rigs off the highway. But supply chains never sleep, and visionary drivers kept hauling despite the incoming freeze. Logan and Caleb spent Wednesday afternoon quietly getting ready. I prepped our old generators, knowing their hidden power. I tested those salvaged heaters, turning junk into warmth, then stocked up. Caleb hung our makeshift tracking board, a masterpiece built from scrap. Tracking fleets and capacities effortlessly. By 9 p.m., the panic calls started. One driver was stuck with a locked wheel, 8 miles east. Another rig sat frozen 12 miles west, its fuel lines gelled instantly. A panicked corporate dispatcher calling us from out of state, begging us to check their driver. He went completely dark after slamming his brakes on the ice. Our rebuilt trucks were ready. Marcus and I took those first calls. Caleb ran the radio, coordinating rescue logistics and tracking our every move. He updated the logs, managed frantic incoming calls, and kept the coffee fresh. He built that brilliant dispatch system himself, turning scavenged hardware into gold. You and I know true potential shines under pressure. That salvage system held. 6 active emergencies, 3 rebuilt recovery trucks, all battling a blinding whiteout. 14 stranded drivers paced my yard, asking about the treacherous roads. Caleb ran the chaos exactly like his homemade board. He blocked out the noise, treating every crisis as just another simple entry. I paused at the door, studying our brilliant makeshift operations setup before heading back out. My look was quick, not needing a single word to speak volumes. But my son caught the message anyway. By 2 a.m., 23 drivers found safe haven inside our little yard. Those rusty containers weren't trash. I turned them into windproof bunkers, fully loaded with saved heaters for these exact moments. The small office was packed but incredibly warm. Truckers are actually very easy people to shelter. They survive drafty warehouses, dirty truck stops, and tiny sleeper cabs. That night they just needed heat, an outlet, and a reliable voice on the phone. I had all three. Then a massive Vance freight convoy lit up our phones at 1:30. 4 heavy Class 8 semi-tractors pulling. Time-critical, highly valuable cargo stuck on the frozen median 2 miles east. They were completely dead, no way to move forward or backward safely. Their lead driver tried 3 corporate roadside assistance numbers only to get automated voicemails or hold times that began with the word several. He found my battered business card in his door pocket, making the call as his absolute last resort. I answered on the second ring. I plunged back into the freeze, hauling all 4 shiny Vance rigs in myself. 2 brutal runs using my ugliest, most powerhouse rebuilt wrecker. Fighting a blinding whiteout where the icy highway vanished into the frozen fields. By 3:30, I had their entire fleet safely parked in my yard. The lead driver shook my freezing hand, called his dispatcher, and gave a detailed rundown. That corporate dispatcher immediately called Charlotte. The CEO herself arrived at 8:45. By then, the storm had cleared to flurries, and county plows were making their first slow pass. She drove herself, no corporate team, no assistance. Imagine this, she stood at my gate staring in disbelief before stepping inside. The scrapyard she dismissed as trash now shielded over 30 massive rigs organized in perfect rows. Stranded drivers were up, prepping their trucks and working together like clockwork. Caleb stood by the door, clipboard ready to scale this operation. He managed the logistics schedule vehicle by vehicle, showing the calm precision of a man building a future empire. Meanwhile, Logan sat on a rusted truck hood, seeing gold where others only saw scrap metal. Sipping coffee, watching the highway of endless potential clear. He spotted her arriving, but he did not stand up. Charlotte marched past salvaged trucks, only seeing worthless junk on wheels. Past generators humming in the bitter cold, missing the highly profitable infrastructure right there. She stopped near Logan, finally noticing the true potential of his operation. Really looking, dropping her corporate filters to see the massive future value. She muttered almost to herself, "I was totally wrong about this place." Logan quietly poured another cup of coffee, setting it on the hood of his cash-generating asset. She could walk away or recognize the value. She picked the cup up. 2 weeks after the storm, an invitation arrived, finally acknowledging the yard's true potential. Heavy paper in a rich envelope, a serious offer for a highly valuable asset. Logan drove to their glass headquarters in work clothes, knowing his true value. He sat across from Charlotte at a massive boardroom conference table. A table that cost more than his entire first year of projected revenue. Charlotte came prepared, placing a bound business proposal right in the middle. She opened the folder, walking him through her vision of a buyout. A total buyout of his land, buildings, and machinery for $1.2 million. She stated it clearly, admitting this new number was a massive jump from her initial insulting bid. An upgrade reflecting the undeniable strategic supply chain value she had finally recognized. An asset she admitted she had completely undervalued before. She said, "This is a very fair price. I want you to consider it seriously." Logan took the packet. "Now watch this." He read every single page with a stone face, asking 0 questions. Once finished, he closed the folder and slid it back across the expensive table. He said, "After debt, I get $800,000. That is just one payday. Right now, my 4 revenue streams clear that in 3 years, and then the asset just keeps printing cash. Selling trades an appreciating cash machine for one small payout. That is just bad business." No anger, no apologies, just the cold, hard math of a wealth builder. Charlotte sat in stunned silence, finally asking, "What exactly do you want?" For a powerful corporate executive, that was a rare admission of defeat. Logan reached into his jacket, placing a folded piece of cheap notebook paper on her table. He smoothed it out flat, totally handwritten. No corporate polish, just raw terms he had mapped out to secure his long-term wealth. He unveiled his real master plan. Vance Freight redirects all emergency services and short-term storage to his yard, making him their exclusive partner. Logan builds out the high-yield infrastructure to handle that massive new volume. Profits split 60% to Logan and 40% to Vance. No land sale, zero equity surrendered, and absolutely no control over his operation. She becomes a passive partner while he keeps scaling his high-growth empire. Charlotte picked up the scrap paper, read it twice, and slowly set it down. You and I know she could have fought back right there, trying to squeeze his profits. She slipped in a buyout clause, trying to lock down future control of this hidden gold mine. She knew exactly how to spot raw potential and lock it down before anyone else. Let's look closer. She stared at that scrap, seeing the blueprint of a future empire. Dead, rusted junkyard and forged the only critical service hub across 40 miles of interstate highway, proving that raw potential thrives under heavy pressure. No massive funding, no corporate team, just pure foresight and preparation. Pure grit and the rare genius of seeing how simple gears build empires. In the real world, far beyond any sterile corporate spreadsheet. She yielded. I'll have legal draft the formal agreement based on these terms. Grabbing a pen, she signed that messy scrap, not just a contract, but a massive future. But a formal promise. The corporate giant was officially investing in this yard's hidden value. Pausing before she signed, she looked up. I told you this place had no future. Logan smiled. You only saw the current rust, not what it could become. That is where true value hides. They shook hands, a firm, clean deal built entirely on mutual long-term vision. Two heavyweights recognizing each other's worth, locking in terms for a massive future. Logan left the polished corporate offices, eager to turn his gritty yard into gold. With the blueprint of his future in his pocket, he got straight back to work. 8 months flew by. He paved the yard, targeting strategic growth areas first. The critical service roads and the main workshop apron were completely rebuilt. All paved with heavy commercial asphalt, marked out precisely for optimal traffic flow by Caleb, who personally measured and stenciled everything over one grueling weekend in September. A bold professional sign now anchored the gate, Mercer Logistics and Recovery Hub. Crisp white letters shining under automatic floodlights, announcing a major player to the world. Those old storage containers were rebuilt into 5 solid units, all linked by a clean covered walkway with bold numbers marking each new bay. The expanded shop now boasted a second bay and a heavy-duty hydraulic lift. Stick with me here. Caleb built a digital inventory system from scratch, automating their growth. Dispatch now ran on twin monitors, instantly tracking fleet movements and unlocking maximum efficiency. The launch wasn't a fancy gala. Logan preferred building value over hosting useless corporate parties. Just a hard-working Thursday morning with 40 key people witnessing a new era begin. Loyal truck drivers who recognized this yard's true potential from day one. Fleet managers from 4 major shipping lines who saw this hub's massive value. Marcus, promoted from part-time graveyard shifts to director of the entire recovery division. Even Adrian drove 200 miles to honor this new empire, holding Logan's hand in deep respect. Even the CEO, Charlotte Vance, arrived quietly with just a single legal advisor. No longer an arrogant skeptic, but a silent partner admiring the powerhouse she nearly missed. Before cutting the ribbon, Logan called Caleb forward to claim his future. He wasted no time on a boring, empty speech. He simply announced, "The new director of operations for Mercer Logistics and Recovery Hub is Caleb Mercer." He handed over a plain metal key, the master key to their newly built empire. Caleb gripped the key with both hands. He squeezed it, looking at the fresh asphalt, the heavy-duty workshop, and the bold new sign shining brightly as a monument to what vision and grit can build. You and I see what crossed his face. Not just pride, but the realization of their ultimate potential. But it was a raw goldmine, something far beyond a sterile corporate brand. Later, when the small crowd finally scattered, they drifted across the lot. The quiet buzz felt like people watching a crazy vision turn into a real empire. Charlotte joined me, standing right near the back fence. She looked over our thriving hub, then toward the humming interstate. She asked, "Did you always know this place had this much potential?" I simply said yes. She fell silent before admitting I never saw the potential. "You see the value now," I replied. Jason Mercer was long gone. I never bothered inviting him, and his phone stayed completely silent. That dead-end phase of the business just quietly dissolved into the background. No drama, just time moving forward, leaving behind a partner who only saw worthless trash and chose to walk away twice. Picture this. I stood by myself for a minute near the far dirt corner. The very spot where, on that bleak first morning, I spotted a rusty wrench buried in the gravel, dug out that raw metal, and pocketed it as a promise. Today, that useless dirt is a premium parking space. A brand new silver flatbed sat there, its engine cooling. I scanned our massive enterprise. I thought of my father. He owned this lot for 30 years, blind to the massive logistics empire waiting underneath. He walked the very same boundary line I walked on that freezing first morning, simply gathering discarded tools from the dust and keeping the old gates oiled. He always knew deep down that this field of rust possessed far greater future value than present junk. Harold Mercer kept this yard because he knew its unseen worth. He stayed fiercely loyal to the raw potential buried right beneath his boots. You and I both know the secret. True value is never found on the surface. I inherited far more than just some rusty soil. I inherited his vision, finally building the massive asset my old man never had the chance to. I turned potential into reality.